team of mercenaries soared through the sky in a helicopter toward a secluded island owned by a private biotech corporation known for its research into enhancing human immunity and even experimenting with genetic upgrades for soldiers. Just 2 days earlier, something had gone terribly wrong at the island's research facility. The company president's daughter, Stacy, had been visiting the site when the incident occurred. With all communications on the island completely severed, the president dispatched a 6-man special team to locate and rescue her. As the helicopter touched down on the island, the pilot stayed behind to secure the craft while the rest of the squad split into 2 groups and set off into the jungle. Addison's team hadn't gone far when they stumbled across the mutilated corpse of a staff member lying in tall grass. Sensing danger, Addison attempted to contact the other group, but the radio emitted only static. Nearby, Dex was taking careful notes in his notebook, while Colt looked visibly unsettled. There was something about the corpse that didn't sit right with him. He turned to Addison, looking for answers, but Addison just shook her head. She was as clueless as the rest. With no better option, the 3 pressed deeper into the island. Meanwhile, the second team was making its way along a riverbank when Russ noticed a rope tied near the water. He paused, gripped by an eerie feeling of déjà vu, like he had stood in that exact spot before. As Addison's team ventured further, they encountered more corpses scattered through the jungle. Eventually, they came across an abandoned tent with yet another body inside. Addison immediately checked the communication gear inside the tent, trying once again to reach Russ's team, but the silence persisted. Outside the tent, Dex picked up a wristwatch from one of the bodies and compared it to his own. To his shock, they were identical. Colt noticed Dex's unease and tried to reassure him, saying, "It's just a coincidence, don't overthink it." Back at the helicopter, the pilot, unable to reach either team by radio and feeling the need to relieve himself, stepped outside. As he's in the middle of doing his business, he notices a strange man quietly passing nearby. The person's face is smeared with blood, and before the pilot can react, the stranger collapses to the ground right in front of him. Frantically, he dashes back to the helicopter and grabs a handgun for protection. His eyes darted around, scanning the area for threats. That's when he notices another pistol lying on the ground which is identical to the one in his hand. In that tense moment, he feels a single droplet of liquid hit his ear from above. Slowly, he turns his head, only to come face to face with a zombie glaring down at him. Before he can react, the creature violently snaps his neck and kills him instantly. With its victim now lifeless, the zombie climbs into the helicopter's cockpit, but just as it begins to lift off, an invisible barrier in the sky halts the aircraft mid-air. Elsewhere on the island, Colt and Dex were standing guard when they heard something rustling in the nearby brush. Weapons raised, they cautiously approached, only to be met by a stranger. Dr. Young, a scientist from the pharmaceutical company. He claimed he had arrived before them and found the facility already in ruins. He also claimed he knew where Stacy was. The group followed him, but when they finally located her, half her face was disfigured and bloodied. After everything they'd endured, their mission had failed before it even began. With nightfall approaching, Addison ordered the team to set up camp and wait until morning before heading to the extraction point. That evening, while chatting with Dr. Young, Dex casually mentioned his own name. The moment the doctor heard it, he grew tense. He rushed to his tent and returned with a notebook. Intrigued, Dex pulled out his own notebook. When they compared the two, they were identical. Same handwriting, same layout, same signature, except that Dr. Young's copy had more written pages. Before they could make sense of it, something horrifying occurred at Russ's campsite. While sitting around a fire, the team heard animal-like breathing nearby. They grabbed their weapons, but before they could react, Tag was violently dragged into the darkness by an unseen force. Russ chased after him and managed to save him just in time. But Chase wasn't so lucky. A monstrous creature suddenly attacked and killed him. But what was truly terrifying was that the creature looked exactly like Chase. Back at Addison's camp, the team tried to decipher the mystery. According to the additional entries in Dr. Young's notebook, Stacy, the president's daughter, would come back to life the following day. Skeptical but desperate for answers, they decided to check. And to their shock, Stacy was alive the next morning. Elsewhere, Russ and Tag reached the southern camp, only to find it abandoned. Russ picked up a radio and surprisingly heard a response. Addison confirmed that Stacy had been found alive. Despite everything, the mission was now technically a success. Later, after some comforting from Dex, Stacy finally opened up. She explained that the research team had landed on the island 3 days ago and quickly discovered that the island was surrounded by an invisible barrier. Once inside, there was no way out. Soon after, a deadly virus spread through the facility. Those infected lost all reason and began hunting down the uninfected. One by one, Stacy watched her colleagues die. She remembered being killed, but had no explanation for how she came back. Dr. Young, however, had a theory. He revealed that he had found several of Dex's notebooks, but these contained entries about events that hadn't happened yet. Based on the notes, he concluded that the island was trapped inside a wormhole. Time on the island was caught in a repeating loop, and every 3 days, the cycle restarted. The same events replayed, and each time a new version of the rescue team arrived, unaware that they'd been here before. Colt, still shaken, asked why they hadn't run into earlier versions of themselves. Dr. Young's answer was grim. Most likely, their previous versions had all died. No one ever survived past the 3rd day, and now the clock was ticking again. Before they could fully process the horrifying truth, Stacy and Dex were startled by a deep growl nearby. Dex instinctively raised his weapon and moved carefully in the direction of the noise. But just as he approached, an ominous figure crept up behind him without a sound. The unsettling growls of the infected echoed inside the tent. Dr. Young's theory was now unfolding before their eyes. The deadly cycle had begun again. Meanwhile, Russ and Tag were also caught in a brutal ambush. But what shook them to their core was the sight of their attackers, exact copies of themselves. Russ didn't hesitate. He opened fire immediately, but the clones showed no reaction. Tag's bullets ran out quickly, forcing him to draw his knife and fight hand-to-hand in a desperate struggle. Meanwhile, Russ spotted another firearm on the ground, grabbed it, and landed a flawless headshot that finally dropped one of the creatures. At the same time, Addison and Colt came face to face with their own undead clones. The shock of seeing their own faces on the attackers froze them in place. Colt hesitated for just a second, enough time for his zombie twin to tackle him to the ground. Addison, however, didn't flinch. She raised her weapon and fired straight into her undead counterpart's head, then joined Colt to finish off the second monster. The group barely survived the first wave, and just as they caught their breath, another horror struck. Dex had just rejoined Stacy, only to watch in horror as her body began to twist unnaturally. Before he could act, the zombified version of Stacy pounced on him, slashing at his face and driving her fingers into his eye sockets. A gunshot rang out. Stacy collapsed. Colt had arrived just in time, but Dex was already gone. As the sun neared the horizon, Russ made one last attempt to contact the headquarters. This time, he finally received a reply. He urgently reported that Stacy had been found and requested immediate evacuation, but the voice on the other end was mechanical. Stacy is already dead. The rescue window is closed. Then the line went silent. At that moment, everything made horrible sense. They were never meant to be saved. From the moment they set foot on the island, they had been unwitting participants in a cruel experiment. Russ's memory suddenly started piecing itself together, and he remembered being here before. Years ago, he had been part of this exact mission, and somehow he had escaped. He remembered finding a boat and fleeing the island, but afterward, his memories had mysteriously vanished. He remembered that when he entered the island, it was September 26, 2023. But when he escaped, time had inexplicably rewound to 2021, and now, once again on September 26, 2023, he was reliving the same nightmare. Dr. Young then shared his own insight. He recalled seeing confidential documents about wormhole research and time manipulation conducted by the company. The time loops were the result of a wormhole trapping the island in a repeating 3-day cycle, but theories didn't matter now. The only way out was to find the same boat Russ had used before. The next morning, the remaining survivors split up. Guided by Russ's fragmented memories, Addison's team successfully located the boat. Miraculously, there was just enough fuel to escape. Things didn't go as smoothly for Russ and Tag. On their way to the meeting point, they were ambushed by a swarm of infected. Out of ammunition, they fought back with everything they had, but the creatures were far too strong. Russ was slammed to the ground. Tag rushed to help, but was tackled by his mutated clone. Pinned beneath his monstrous self, Tag struggled desperately until the creature sank its teeth deep into his neck. By the time Russ managed to kill the last zombie, Tag was already dead. Russ barely had time to mourn. A low growl sounded behind him. He turned and saw a mutated version of himself, gun in hand. Just as the creature prepared to fire, Colt arrived and shot it down. As they tried to escape, another zombie lunged at Russ, knocking him into a sharp wooden spike jutting from a tree. Bleeding heavily, Russ knew he wasn't going to make it and urged Colt to go on without him. Colt reluctantly handed him a gun and turned away. Back at the boat, Dr. Young stared at the approaching explosion while Addison insisted on waiting for the others. At that moment, Dr. Young picked up a pipe wrench and prepared to leave. Colt arrived just in time, grabbing the rope tied to the vessel. Addison, who had been unconscious, came to just as the boat began to move toward the wormhole. But then, Dr. Young began to mutate. Since he had arrived a day before the rest, the transformation had already started in him. He lunged at Addison but was instantly shot in the head. It was Russ, using his final strength to ensure they made it out alive. As the boat approached the wormhole, a blinding light enveloped it, and they vanished. When Colt washed ashore, all of his memories were gone. Addison, however, found himself once again on the island, but this time in the version before its destruction. Later, back in San Francisco, a different version of Addison approached Colt, who had no memory of what had happened. She asked him to join a new mission, to rescue a rich businessman's daughter from a remote island.